Every society is 3 meals away from chaos. Who said that? Vladimir Lenin. And what he's talking about is that when you get hungry, you don't stay hungry for long. When you're starving, having trouble feeding your kids, you're going to do whatever you have to do to take the next step. This is how revolts break out. When people aren't able to get the energy or the food that they need. And I told you before about the oil wars upcoming, which are in process right now. All the countries are posturing, building militarized islands on top of oil deposits, laying claim to new oil regions in Africa. There's a lot going on. And I told you that the oil wars break out not when we run out of oil, but as we approach the period where we're going to run out of oil, which is now. For many of you, this is your very first time here. My name is Peter Leeds, and I am the small stocks specialist. And you might ask, why small stocks? Because they produce the biggest gains, if you know how to find them. And please understand that nothing in this video or anything we put out ever is intended as personalized trading advice for you. We've got about 40, 50 years of oil at the current usage rate left that we know about known reserves. And of course, yes, there's going to be new technologies. There will be limited use as prices increase. I understand all of that. But the point is, there's a lot of countries right now that don't care about any of this. They're just using oil, developing nations, and they're going to use oil more so tomorrow than they are today. The demands on oil are only increasing. What's happening is that there's a lot of an economic slowdown worldwide, so there's going to be less demands on oil in the short term, and so you're seeing the prices decline. But as we approach going forward 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, it'll just get worse and worse and worse. But it's more than oil wars now. It's energy wars, especially with all the droughts and the lack of water worldwide. So I want to tell you a little bit about these resource wars, and I'm going to lean into an awesome report Stephanie wrote recently about rare earth elements and her take on some of the best opportunities to invest in the rare earth elements space. We'll talk about the heat wave in the United Kingdom and other heat records made in California, Sacramento, India, worldwide. Things are getting warmer, which is why people are not noticing how significant it is that Russia has now cut off all the gas supplies from the Nord Stream 1 pipeline to Europe. It's not so cold right now, so no one really notices, but once it gets colder, people are going to realize that they're not getting oil from Russia like they used to. Just before I get into the rare earth elements, and even tell you the one rare earth element which is radioactive, and it's in my body right now. And just before we get to that, and I've got a question about Tim Bowen, about penny stocks that I want to address in this video as well. We'll get to that in just 1 second. But first, when you get a testimonial like this from a member of the Peter Leeds Army, it makes the highlight reel in my videos. Thanks, Peter, for this great information. I feel blessed to know that I'm getting great information from someone who is the greatest at what they do. And I believe you're the only one giving important information about every aspect of investing and understanding what's going on in this economy. And that's from Dexter. And Dexter, as a member of the Peter Leeds Army, I really appreciate what you're saying, Dexter. Thank you so much. I happen to agree with you, just so you know. If California were its own country, it would be the 5th largest economy in the world, just behind Germany and just ahead of India. California has more GDP production than India, which is almost the most populated country in the world, just behind China, but they're so close now, within about 40,000 last they reported. So probably by now, India is the most populated country in the world. The point is, though, between India and China, you have 1 out of every 3 people on the earth lives right there. That's a lot. But California is facing a major drought right now, as are many other places on the earth right now. The problem with the drought, though, people say, oh, we won't have enough water to drink, or we won't have enough water to water our lawns, or maybe the agriculture, the crops will take a hit. Not just speaking about California, but anywhere. Understand, if you want to produce steel, it requires a ton of water. If you want to do fracking, hydraulic fracking, you have to put a whole bunch of chemicals and a whole bunch of water into the rock to get the extra oil out. Aluminum production needs a lot of water. Everything related to the mining industry requires a tremendous amount of water. What you have now is people fighting for water between the crops and the farmers. People want to drink it. They want to water their lawns. They want to have steel production. They want to have aluminum production. There's just too much demands on water, not enough water to go around. Not just California, okay? Not just California. Many places worldwide. The lack of rainfall is putting a lot of the crops at risk. You've already got food insecurity. It's just making it worse. And fast forward 5 years from now, you want to have a lot of population migrations. There's going to be adjustments. People are going to move around on the earth because of the way some places, like Sacramento, continually is hitting record temperatures. It's getting way too hot there. People are going to say, instead of Sacramento, why don't I live just on Pismo Beach? It's nearby, beautiful place. Go there. So there'll be a lot of adjustments. And in that, there's a lot of transition. And in transition is opportunity. For example, if an environment changes and makes it less likely you're going to live in that space and you're likely to go to another location, people who invest in that other location where everyone's moving to typically make a lot of money on the real estate investments. For example, this is from CNBC Pro. Russia claims punitive economic sanctions imposed by the West are responsible for the indefinite hit to gas supplies via Europe's main pipeline. Russia's blaming America for putting sanctions on them for unprovoked invading another sovereign nation and destroying everything there. So we put sanctions on them, and now they say, well, you have the sanctions, so we're not going to give oil to Europe anymore. And this is what I talked about. I had a problem with back when people were saying Russia might use energy as a weapon or a negotiation tactic. And when they wrote that, I'm telling you that they're already doing that. Now it's just a matter of how far are they going to take it? How far are they going to go? The conversation now is not about whether or not the oil supplies will be cut off. That was the conversation leading up till now. Russia's cut off the oil supplies. Now we're talking about, will it go the whole winter without oil? It represents the clearest indication yet that the Kremlin is seeking to force Europe to lift the economic measures in order for Moscow to turn the taps back on ahead of winter. So Russia can influence other nations and try to put pressure on them to relieve the sanctions. So they are using it as a weapon, and the real risk is in the first place when you let it get set up that way. But unfortunately, it's too late now. This is already the way it is. Anytime, whether you're reliant on a country for oil or you're reliant on a country like China for rare earth elements, which we're going to go to in just a second here, anytime you're reliant on a country, they'll use that to get the best result for them. You want oil? Here's what we want. That's sort of the situation that we've allowed ourselves to get involved with. A lot of countries in Europe are saying, why are we even helping Ukraine? I don't care about Ukraine. I want to heat my house for my children this winter. So it puts a lot of pressure on the alliance. A lot of the best countries in the world come together to say, you can't just invade Ukraine and start bombing it and take it over for no provocation, for no reason. This latest move has significantly increased the risk that Europe may not get further gas flows through Nord Stream 1 for the whole winter. Analysts at energy consultancy Rystad Energy said in a research note, if you have a supply for something that's reliant on the person supplying it, deciding whether or not they feel like giving it to you at that point, whatever they blame it on, they say, oh, it's because of this or that, and they just turn off the oil. The point is they turn off the oil. My point is that you're not in a sustainable and healthy situation with oil supplies. If you're getting it from someone who you're not sure you're going to get the oil, that doesn't count as having your oil needs or energy needs met. The United Kingdom is having major heat waves. They're having droughts there as well. And in Europe, we've never seen a drought like this before, said Esnial. He's a 55-year-old, fourth-generation farmer. And he's never seen a drought like this. He's talking about France. And then he goes on to say, it's not only France. A withered Europe faces what scientists say could be its worst water shortage in hundreds of years on record. So in something that unique, something that out there, there's obviously a lot of moving parts. There's obviously a lot of opportunities here and a lot of risks. You got to be very careful. There's not only survival, not getting enough water, not getting enough water to create crops, not getting enough water to create steel. There are tremendous concerns if we don't have enough water, even for just the industrial usage. Everybody thinks about, I won't get enough food to eat. There's that too, yeah, but there's also, you won't get enough aluminum and steel. Just before we get into Stephanie's rare earth elements report, I'm going to read you some parts of that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Tim Bowen and the question I got about him and his view on low price shares. But first, this is from the Toronto Star. California is just the latest casualty in a year of sometimes deadly heat waves that began in Pakistan and India this spring and swept across parts of the northern hemisphere, including China, Europe, and other areas of the United States. Climate change has also exacerbated droughts, dried up rivers, made wildfires more intense, and conversely, led to massive flooding around the globe as moisture evaporating from the land and water is held in the atmosphere, then redeposited by intense rains. They're even calling for possibly a massive flood in California, unlike anything we've ever seen. And they're talking about this year. Scientists are reluctant to attribute any specific water event to global warming, but say heat waves are exactly the type of changes that will become more common. I had a firefighter from the Toronto Island here on my back porch and my father the other day, and they were talking about how global warming is a sham or it's not a real thing because over history, in thousands and thousands of years, the earth gets warmer and colder for thousands of years. And we're just at a peak right now where it's going to be getting warmer and warmer. It's just a natural thing that we have every few thousand years. That's their argument. Maybe, I don't know. I don't have a horse in this race. I'm just saying that anything we can do to start slowing down the fact that the entire earth seems to be burning is a good thing. Temperatures hit an all-time high in Sacramento of 116 degrees on Tuesday. For every nation in the world besides the United States of America, that's 46.7 degrees Celsius. The entire Earth uses the metric system, except the United States. They tried to implement it a few years back when I was a teenager, and it didn't take. In the 1970s, Sacramento, that's the capital of California, had 5 extreme heat days per year, Ulrich said. Today, it has about 10. And that will double again by the middle of this century. And just before I get into rare earth elements, I'm going to address this question I got about Tim Bowen and his take on low price shares, penny stock shares. Hi Peter, I'm a lifetime member and really enjoy your emails and podcasts. What's your opinion on Tim Bowen's take on penny stocks in this forwarded email? I promise that if you answer the email or do a YouTube episode on this subject, I will join your army. Ball's on your court, Dan. I'm looking forward to having you join the army along with everybody else. And you'll get a special icon beside every comment you make from now on. I'll know who's a supporter of the Peter Leeds channel and how long they've been a supporter. So thanks for your question, Dan. And you sent me an email forwarded about Tim Bowen talking about low-priced shares. And at first, it sounded familiar to me. I'm like, I know Tim Bowen. I know that name. How do I know that? And then I remembered he interviewed me one time.
Well, welcome back to the Steady Trade Podcast, everybody. Tim Bowen, Stephen Johnson, and me are excited today to interview Peter Leeds. Peter and I met. How did we meet, Peter? Who introduced us?
It was with the Dreaming Room with Michael Gerber kind of thing, I think.
That's right.
And all that. We palled around in Manhattan for a while back in the day, and that's how we got to know each other. I don't know if you remember this, but you did a testimonial for my infomercial.
That's right. My God.
And I told you that I don't do interviews hardly ever anymore, but for you, I will do one because I owe you one, and I'm definitely going to be doing what I can for you.
Seems like a great guy, and as soon as I saw that it was Tim Bowen you're talking about, I was way less concerned. I was concerned when you first asked me. I go, well, be careful of this stuff. But then I realized it was involving Tim Bowen. He's a reputable guy, good reputation, really nice dude. So I was way less concerned. So look into it, see if you like what he's saying, but I think if you're looking for any low price shares, $5 and under, and you want to learn about the best companies that are out there, the best companies going, then you should be subscribed for 55 cents a day to the peterleeds.com newsletter. And if you do, you'll get all sorts of things like, for example, this latest industry report about rare earth elements that Stephanie did. And she said, here's our top picks for this industry based on the prices of these companies right now. And rare earth elements are a collection of 17 different really specific minerals. There's very few of these minerals, but they each have specific things they can do that no other mineral can do. For example, one of the 17 is injected in my system. It's a radioactive rare earth element, and when they give me an MRI, they put that in as a contrast dye so they can see what's going on inside your body, if the disease is active, all that kind of stuff. But I no longer do that anymore. I spend a lot of time doing chelations to take all the heavy metals out of my system, one of which was gadolinium. When they tested me, gadolinium and lead were both off the charts. Lead because I grew up in a house in the beaches in Toronto that had lead pipes. In this month's Industry Spotlight Report, we're taking a close look at the rare earths industry and highlighting 3 inexpensive rare earth elements players. Rare earths are a group of 17 minerals often found in the same deposits but in low concentrations. They have a number of industrial uses, but investors are perhaps most excited about their important role in producing permanent batteries for electric vehicles. And just to bring it back to resource wars, listen to this part. China produces 60 to 80% of the world's rare earth supply. But the US, Myanmar, and Australia are other major players fighting for a bigger piece of the pie. Canada, which reportedly has some of the world's largest rare earth elements resources, is playing catch-up, with the government investing $3.8 billion in developing a minerals strategy. Given growing geopolitical tensions, the need to find rare earths outside China is becoming abundantly clear. Notably, China has already cut off its rare earth element supply once to Japan in 2010, and it had disastrous effects on Japan. Buzz has been growing steadily around rare earth elements industry for some time now, but there still exists some relatively low-priced opportunities out there for savvy investors, and for our readers, of course. Here are some of our current favorites. And she goes on to talk about 3 of the ones that we like the best. And the thing about rare earth elements is that you haven't heard about it for the first time now. You've heard about it years ago, decades ago. People talked about rare earth elements. The stocks did really well. It became a thing. But a lot of these companies that are producing the rare earth elements were not doing that well. They're just in the right industry and everybody piled into it. So the stock did okay, but the company didn't do as well as I would like to see. There's a difference now, though. You've heard about rare earth elements. It comes up and fades away every once in a while in the media cycle. But right now, it's more relevant because this is the first time where it's actually becoming more visually obvious that there's a push and pull and there's a lot of vulnerabilities because we don't produce our own rare earth elements here in America. And we're realizing that now. And a lot of the push for Canada to develop some of its own rare earth elements resources, a lot of that is likely coming from American interests. It's important that Canada has all the rare earth elements that America needs, especially as these resource wars just get worse and worse and worse. They won't get better. The resources are all depleting. We have less oil today than we did yesterday. We use about 85 million barrels a day. And at that rate, all the oil that we know exists that we'll be able to get to and use will last us about 45 to 50 more years. I used to have oilclock.com. I had a whole page about how much oil there was, how fast it was being used, and I talked about new technologies, new oil finds, less use as prices increase. I considered all of that, okay? And it still is a depleting resource, no matter how you look at it. It will eventually go to zero. Just like the US dollar, it's a matter of time. It just hasn't happened yet. Just wait, it'll go to zero. So will total global oil supplies. But as we approach that point, I'm telling you, that's where a lot of the wars will start. Where it's not so obviously based on a lack of oil or we need more oil. Pearl Harbor was a response when the Japanese had their oil supplies cut off because they're trying to slow them down from the whole Southern Asian blitzkrieg that they were unleashing across places all over South China Sea. So the good news, though, is that in all this chaos that's happening either way, whether you worry about it or not, whether you do something about it or not, either way, this is happening. And there's opportunities that you can then use to land on your feet, enrich yourself, support yourself, help the ones that you care about if you make the right choices. For example, getting involved with the right kinds of rare earth element stocks. These are little companies designed to turn a few $100s into a few thousand for you. And remember, it's only costing you 55 cents a day. For the world famous Peter Leeds newsletter with subscribers on 6 different continents. And at this point now, we're in our 3rd decade and we're just getting warmed up. We love you guys. We do this for you and because of you. And we really hope that you subscribe to this channel so that we can keep you abreast of everything that's happening as it's happening ahead of time. We hope you join the Peter Leeds Army, and we hope you share the video with somebody, at least one person. Everybody has to share this video with one person. That's my lock of the week.
And I remember too, when I wanted to put you in my book, that I had people push back on me because of the kind of trading you did. And I was like, no, Peter is such a man of integrity. You can't talk me out of his style of trading. So
that's a good point, though, because you particularly will do best by focusing on shorter term timeframes and technicals. Other people will do better by avoiding risks. Other people do better by looking at the fundamentals. I tell people they should call the company and talk to the investor relations person and ask them, where do you see the company going 5 years from now? How many employees do you have now? How many did you have 2 years ago? You know, like stuff like that, stuff that you wouldn't read maybe necessarily until you ask them. It'll tell you things, and then it's kind of like not a game, but it's like you can sort of get a better idea about how a company's going to do. It's a lot easier to pick companies that will do well than to pick stocks that will do well. I thoroughly believe that.